On today's episode of The Written Compass, we're going to talk about a part of the publication process that you may have not thought about before, and that is the inside, the interior, the pages where your beautiful words are going to be shared. We're going to talk about what it is like and what you need to think about in designing the inside of your book. And I'm excited to have Melisa Graham, who is our interior designer, along with many other things here at Synergy Publishing Group. I cannot wait to share this information with you. If this is something that's been holding you back from hitting publish or just something you're curious about, we have all the details and all the things that you need. So let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Written Compass. Shana Hartman here, embodied writing coach. I'm super excited today. We are on a roll of having some amazing guests on the podcast. As you know, if you've hung around, usually it's just me. And we have just had an opportunity to share the space, share the podcast, and get some other voices in here to support you on your book writing journey. And today we have Melisa Graham, who is our amazing, she does lots of things with us, with the team here at Synergy Publishing Group. But today we're going to talk about the insides, the stuff between the covers, which as a reader, you are probably sometimes aware and sometimes don't notice at all, both of which are probably intentional that you may not realize. So we kind of want to get into the nitty gritty because a lot of people on this podcast are either interested in writing a book or have started their book writing journey. Maybe they're doing it themselves. Maybe they're doing it with support. And so Melisa has a ton of experience. She comes from marketing communications. She's also been in the kind of self-assisted publishing world for a while now. She's published her own books. And so we just want to get down and just pick her brain and learn all the things that we need to know about the stuff that goes between the covers. And so Melisa is going to kind of break down sort of some key things to think about and consider as you are getting your book ready for publication, whatever that may be. And I would say, Melisa, you can tell me if I'm wrong, like even in the traditional publishing space, it's still good to know these things if you're going that route, just so you know, even if you don't necessarily have a lot of say over it. If it comes up or as it comes up, it's just good to know like what people are doing to your
Right.
pages and your
Yeah.
work and all that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So Melisa creates beautiful, beautiful stuff and it's so intentional. I would really love to know, Melisa, just kind of like your approach to and thoughts about how to approach the insides of books.
Okay. First, hi. Hi,
Hi.
everyone. Nice to be here. So there's four main things I think about, and caveat is there's no one specific way to do this because it is a
Mm,
creative endeavor.
mm.
You don't have to do things the way other people have done them.
We might need to say that again.
Right. This is a creative endeavor,
Yeah.
and it does not. You do not have to do it the way I would do it. Like you're only limited by the parameters of the printing and distribution method and the
Mm,
publishing method that you use.
yeah.
So from
I'm just
that
gonna
perspective, it's your baby.
yeah.
Do what you want.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's really important. Yeah, because I think a lot of people, again, as with writing in general, feel like there's these strict have tos, and there's really very few of those. And even the ones that might feel like, well, this is the way you do it, there is still ultimate creative liberty that we can
Yeah.
take with intention. And I think that's going to be like the common thread here is like
Yeah.
have some intention around it and do make it yours and do be, have your
Yeah.
feel about
Yeah.
it. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
Love that.
So, from there's some technical things that,
Sure.
gets into the nitty gritty, but whoever is laying out the interior of your book, or if you're doing it yourself, you can make it look however you want it to look and
Mhm.
still follow those technical parameters that you need to
Oh,
follow.
yeah.
So,
Cool.
okay, so here's the four main things I think about. One is your reader's expectations.
Mhm.
And that could be based on the genre that you're writing in. It could be based on your previous work. Um, it can be based on a number of things, but spend some time thinking about what they expect. For example, if you're writing a fiction fantasy book, those readers love a good map.
Mm.
They
Mhm.
want to place themselves in the context of this universe that is new to
Yep.
them.
Where are we in this world?
We
Yes.
love a map. Um, a lot of like business books might have questions at the end of each chapter for thought and
Mhm.
reflection.
Mhm.
Some fiction books might have a book club guide at the end.
Mhm.
So, that's more about content and less about the look of it, but it
Well,
relates.
it's a both and, like a lot
Yeah.
of times, and I should say, like, there's a lot of, just like with the writing process, there's a lot of recursiveness and back and forth, and the
Mhm.
formatting, once you get into this interior formatting, it it sometimes can impact the content of the book, and then
Exactly.
as you're writing it, you can also take into consideration the formatting. Like, I'm just thinking of a client's book we were in and working with this morning, and she's got a lot of quotes that we know are going to be, what we call little inlays in the book, so not a part of the prose of the writing, but sort of these little asides, probably in a some kind of grayscale box-ish of some
Full quote.
sort. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she knew that and felt these quotes. They didn't it was going to take a lot to make them work into the prose. And so we came up with a creative way that felt good for her, of like how to include them and not
Yeah.
distract, like to be a part of the book
Yeah.
and not a part of the prose, like those kinds of
Right.
things. Yeah.
Right. And that gets into my next one. What experience do you want your users to have? So there's
Mm.
their expectations, and then there's
Mhm.
your expectations for them or your wants for them.
Yeah.
Um, so that can include things like, well, first, some of that's accomplished through your writing,
Right.
but then other parts of it are like, what is the font that you're using? And
Mhm.
what does that convey? How legible is the font?
Mm.
Is your audience older? Does the font need to be larger? Or is your font like a millennial and they need lots of air around it, lots of negative space around the words because that's like a millennial aesthetic. Um, it can also mean like, so is your book the kind that you want people to sit down and read all the way through? Or
Mhm.
do you want them to pause with each chapter?
Mhm.
Or is it a choose your own adventure where they
Mhm.
can pick it up wherever and read? And some of that is accomplished through the layout. Like if you want
Right.
them to read all the way through, your chapters might run in together with no breaks between. But if
Right.
you want them to pause, you might have each chapter have a full opening spread.
Yes.
Um, so, you have to kind of think about where are the pauses in the book and how do you create that visually. Um,
Yeah, I think of, when you were designing, Juliette Kuhn's book, Who You Calling Crazy, that was a big part of her desire for the journey for the reader. Her whole book is about ending the stigma of therapy and really supporting people and finding the type of mental health therapy that really meets them where they are. And she knew early on, and then Melissa was able to coordinate that with her to create an interior where people really could pick it up wherever they felt they needed to go. So there are specific parts, and we separated those parts very visually. Um, and then even in the pages, using questions and headings and things, which are like often bolded or italicized in books, to kind of help people see quickly, oh, this is a place I want to go and hang out for a bit. Okay, I see
mhm.
that next one. I don't want to, that doesn't apply to me. So I'm going to skip that one. And that's the journey that Juliet wanted her reader to be able to have.
Yeah. And, like we said earlier, some of that is through the writing. Some of that
Right.
happens in the manuscript phase. Like your editor might suggest, we need way markers. We need subheads in here to help guide people or something. But then some of it happens in
Hmm.
layout. And again, layout can inform content, content can inform layout.
Right.
So,
Love that.
and one more thing to think about in terms of the experience you want them to have, um, is whether you want to invite people to write in the book or not.
Hmm.
Um, so sometimes having specific spaces for that where you ask them. to do it, invite them to do it with lines or with open space or, whatever. I think in one of the books we did, we included a bunch of blank pages at the end
Right.
because like it's for people to write in.
Yeah.
I think that was Melissa Panera's book, maybe.
Yes.
Life is written in pencil.
Yes.
Yeah. So go write in the book in pencil. She's like asking you to.
Which
Um,
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah. So the third thing to think about is the cover. Sometimes the cover designer and the interior designer are not going to be the same people.
Mhm.
And that's true of lots of different publishing companies. And if you're self-publishing and you hire a designer to do one and a different designer to do another, they still need to match.
Right.
So they need to have the same look, feel. You can do that through matching fonts. You can do that by pulling some element of the cover art into the inside. Um, they just the expectation you set through the cover needs to be met through the inside, and that's both in terms of the content and the feel.
Yeah, I love
The
that.
emotional
Yeah.
aspects.
It really is kind of a package, an experience that you're creating, and the intentionality is that readers have that and feel that from the visual outside as well as the visual and formatting inside.
Hmm.
Totally.
And so, in my mind, the words convey the ideas, but the design conveys the feeling.
Mm. Mhm.
Um, like at first glance, the design is going to give you a feeling before you've read anything.
Right.
And you want to make sure that matches what your intentions are for the book.
Yeah, love that.
And then the fourth thing is the really technical stuff. And I'll list some of those. Stop me if you have questions about what we're talking about.
Yeah, we'll do the yeah, we're gonna get into the technical because it's important. We wanna I mean, this needs to inform you. And also, I think it's important to notice how you feel as you're experiencing any elements of some of the things we're going through. For instance, I'm thinking of one of our clients, like if she had to go and do this and figure this out by herself, even if she had, Melissa tell her the things to go through and do, she would never, she's getting ready to finish and publish her book like any day now. She would never be here. She would never be at that phase. It is just not only not in her wheelhouse or skill set, and it's like an aversion to getting her book out. And so that's why you have support. Is like these are things to think about as you're considering your options for publishing. Of like, I don't want to deal with that, or I want to know, but I don't want to do it. Like, or ooh, this gets me all excited. Yeah, I'd love to figure out how to do all of it. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
noticing how you're feeling I think is a interesting indication of like what level of support
Mm-hmm.
you want to have on your book writing journey too.
Mm-hmm.
All
Okay,
right,
so
let's do
we
it.
want to get into some technical stuff.
Yeah, let's get into some
Okay.
tech.
One technical thing is high resolution images. So if you have images inside your book, they have to be high res. So that's two things. You can't copy and paste images off the internet. Um, that's a
Period.
licensing issue.
Right.
So you need to both have licensing permission or ownership of the artwork, and it needs to be high resolution.
Right.
Um, there are a variety of different ways to tell if an image is high resolution. If you have questions though, and if you have an image heavy book, I would just really encourage people to work with a designer and not try to
Okay.
DIY it unless they know what I'm talking about when I say DPI.
Okay. Yes. Great. So if that made sense to you, then you might be able to figure this out on your own if you've got a lot of images. I think the key that I want to reiterate here of that piece is they need to be high quality images. They need to be images that you either have permission to use or they are your own. And if any of those things you're not understanding, you're going to want to get support because one, especially if you're self-publishing, your book is going to get flagged and not get published, or you're going to have people coming after you if it does somehow scoot in. And we don't want those images to look yucky in the book. Like again, part of the journey, just like we want our words to be read easily, we want the same with whatever kind of visual elements are going on.
Right. Right. Okay. Next piece. I mentioned earlier that the cover and the interior need to match in feeling. They also need to match in trim size.
Yes.
So that's something you might not think about if you're like doing it yourself in Word or something. Make sure that your pages are the same size. Um,
So let's just break, like an example of that is 6 by 9 is kind of the most common, not
mhm,
the only, but the most common trim size. So that cover, and then the interior, there are margin and formatting things, right, to consider based on that cover trim size and how many pages of content you
right,
have. And remember, this is just a reminder, we've talked about this before on the podcast, that the words count that's showing up in a Google Doc or a Word document, it won't be the same as in a printed page. So
correct,
that's why the trimming and the formatting of the interior is important.
right. And related, your printer, and each printer has different print specs. So, if you're going with a print on demand like Ingram Spark or KDP, their requirements are both slightly different as far
Mhm.
as how much bleed space you need, what your safe area margin is. The spine size is even different for each one,
Yep.
depending on which paper type you select. So these are all things that you have to factor in.
Yeah.
Um, with margins, and here's something that I'm kind of obsessive about.
Which we love.
Your interior margin should be bigger than your outside page margin.
Yeah. So when
Because,
you're opening a book and you're
yeah,
looking at 2 pages, the interior
yeah,
is what in the
it's
exterior.
falling in the gutter, and it's harder to read the words closest to the spine if you don't have wide enough a margin there.
Yep.
So I've had people when I've laid out their books and they've seen them, they're seeing the different margin and they're saying, "But the margins are different. You need to fix that." No, no, no. That was intentional.
Right.
I promise. um, other thing with the print method, I'm guessing that most people listening to this are going to go print on demand, but
Yeah.
in the off chance that they have some money to spend and want to go to a traditional offset printer, the requirements are different. Um, an offset printer, for example, your page count needs to be in multiples of 8, 16, or 32, depending on the printer. With most print on demand stuff, it can be just multiples of 2,
Mhm.
um, 2 or 4, and they'll just add blank pages at the end to make it the right page count for them. But with a traditional offset printer, you have to have the specific page count, and it has to meet their requirements.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm hearing over and over, like, either hire the person that knows these things or knows how to find these things out, or you have to double, triple check whatever process you're using to get your book printed or published. Make sure that you have looked at, and they all have them. It is out there.
yeah,
It's not, I will, having had lots of experience with this, it is not always the most user friendly or easiest, even with the videos and the guides and all that kind of stuff. I'll just say for the
mhm,
average person, it's probably going to be a little bit gobbledygook. That's why support is nice, but it's
mhm.
not doable.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally doable to
Yeah.
DIY it. Yeah. Um, and one of the other things I'll mention is like if you're doing print and ebook, there are things you have to do to make that ebook export work right that you don't have to do for the print version.
Yeah. It's
So
two
there's
different.
extra steps.
Yes.
Um, and for ebook conversion, I believe you can ask those services to convert it for you, Ingram Spark or KDP, convert a PDF to ebook for you. It may not turn out the way you would want it ideally,
Yes.
which is why I use the layout software I use is called InDesign, and it has an ebook export function that I can use, and I can see exactly what the book is gonna look like in the various ebook platforms.
Right.
And I know like the results are right in front of my eyeballs, and there's no guesswork. Um, so that's beneficial to have
Yeah.
something like that. Um, There was one more thing I was going to say, and I've forgotten what it was.
It's okay. I think this is like so good. So let's kind of recap the four things. So first one is what might be the expectations of the reader based on several things, the genre, books you might have written before, etc. So I did want to touch on like books you've written before, meaning if you'll notice, if you ever read series or multiple books from authors, they will often have similar looks or vibes and just tweaks and things to them because it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like their brand, you know?
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean you can't create different things. Like I think of Brene Brown and Atlas of the Heart is a very different look than, any of her uh,
Right.
other books. And that's okay, but it was intentional and it's got, it's very visual, it's
Mm-hmm.
color, all that kind of stuff. Then the other is like, what are you wanting to create, the journey you are wanting to create for the reader in and of themselves. Remind me what the third one was.
The cover and the
Yes.
clothes, the inside needs to match the inside.
Yeah, so we're having that
Outside.
continuity. Yeah, that intentional, that what's on the outside continues in some way, shape, or form, from the fonts to potential images, visuals, all that kind of stuff, that there's a coordination there. And then fourth are these technical pieces that can potentially sound daunting, but basically like your book will get chopped off weird and words will be missing, the content will be gone, if you don't have these technical pieces.
Yeah.
And each of these self publishing spaces have their own guides that you have to pay attention to. Again, when you're working with us and have the amazingness of Melisa, all of that is covered and we get to support you in that so that we come to you with questions and ideas and design style choices. But ultimately, we're taking care of, and Melisa is taking care of all of those technical things. Behind the scenes, but we do it within coordination with our clients and our writers so that the book gets to look how they want it to look.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you want to make sure kind of people think about in terms of, or just sort of take away if they're, too long, didn't listen, whatever, around the interior?
Yeah. Um, Paper was one of the things I was going to talk
Yes,
about.
yes, yes.
Your paper choices from the two different main print on demand distributors is a little bit different.
Hmm.
Um, I would encourage people to upload their books to both, order a copy of each, and look and see which one they like better.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to stick with one as their main distributor over the other. Because it's a different feel, and there's some different options at each place. So
Yeah.
you might want to check those out. Um,
Yeah. Love that. I think too, one of the best ways it supports our clients in starting to figure out some of these things, because something they've never thought about before, but what they even want for an interior is to literally go to their bookshelves or literally go walking through a bookstore,
yeah.
touch books, feel books, look at them, look at the cover, look at the insides. What are they, and what are you noticing about them, even if you can't like name the technical whatever.
Mhm.
Like you're not going to know what the font is necessarily unless you have
Yeah.
some knowledge in that yourself. But that's the easiest way to start to get a sense of what you like and what you don't like, and then that can help anyone you're working with, or if you're doing it yourself, to start
Mhm.
to just narrow it down, because otherwise it's like it's overwhelming, can potentially be
Mhm.
overwhelming, or you're just like kind of you just throw your hands up, whatever, and it doesn't wind up looking the way you want it to look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like, you don't have to do this by yourself.
Yeah.
Like, ask somebody questions. I mean, even if you're not going to ask us, there are communities, there are forums, there are
Yeah.
places on the internet that are happy to, answer a question or two.
Hmm. And
Um,
even those self-publishing places have spaces to ask questions as
yeah.
well. Yep.
So, don't be afraid. There's no stupid questions in this.
Correct. Amazing.
So ask.
Melissa, if folks want to get a hold of you, connect with you further, what's the best place to do that?
I would say Instagram,
Awesome.
which is it's one, the numeral one, S, Melisa, which is spelled with one S, hence the one S, Melisa. Or they can go to my website, melisagrahamcreative.com.
Great. And we'll have that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Melissa. I
Thank
love all of
you.
the amazing things you do for our
Thank you,
books
Tina.
and excited to continue working and would love to hear what of these things landed for you, supported you, what maybe is some area you need some more discussion or conversation around. We'd be happy to come back and do another episode. And no matter what, this interior is important and your words matter and they need to get out there no matter what. So get the help you need. You know, this stuff is valuable and we don't want it to overwhelm you or hinder you from writing your book. Once you get to that place, you can always get support around it. So thank you as always for tuning in and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Written Compass. If you are enjoying this content, do me a favor and go and review the podcast. This allows me to share and get these messages out to the people who really need them, who we want to read their books in the future. You can also go and share your thoughts and tag me at Shana Hartman _ on Instagram. Again, this is just a way for us to get connected and share the writing love. And if you know that you are ready to write your book, that message that's been burning inside of you for a long time, then I want to talk to you. My team and I want to talk to you. Head on over to shanahartman.com and click Work with Us. From there, you'll see an application to explore and see if writing your book is your next best step.